I have just taken a big financial risk and bought this cheap Yamaha MT125. In fact, this MT125 is the most expensive bike I have ever bought on this channel. And arguably, it's one of the best looking bikes I've ever bought on this channel. I mean, it's definitely a looker. And while this bike does look very, very good, it does have a very big issue. And this time, it's not that it doesn't run, because it does. And it's not that this bike isn't rideable, because this one is. It even has an MOT until the middle of next year. The issue this bike actually has caused it to be returned not once, but twice to the dealer that I bought it from. Eagle Eye viewers may have spotted this already when I turned the ignition on the first time, but this bike has got an engine management light on that the dealer couldn't overcome. But I think I might have a solution to overcome that engine management light. Now, normally I wouldn't want to go anywhere near a bike with an engine light or some sort of warning light on because I wouldn't really know where to start. But this bike is a 2020, so it's got lots of newfangled technology that I'm not really used to, but it does mean it has an OBD port. So if I can figure out how to get the seat off somewhere. Okay, I got it. It was hiding under this flap back here, just above the rear wheel. So we pop that. And it should let go of the seat. Okay, there we go. Bit of an angle, but it comes off. And this one here, I believe, is the OBD port. Pop that cap off. Now, obviously, different brands use different OBDs. They're not your standard one. That's what one on a car would look like. This is an adapter for that, so just going to get the right one of these on. So with it all hooked up and the fault code red, it's P2195. So I won't bore you with all the diagnostic details that I don't understand, but that fault code is an O2 sensor. Now this is where things get a little bit trickier, because I know it's not the O2 sensor that is at fault, because that in there is a brand new O2 sensor. I believe it's the actual sensor port that is at fault. It would appear that at least the head on this engine has been changed before. Because on a standard head for an MT125 of the year 2020, the O2 sensor would go about there where my finger is, on top of the exhaust outlet on the cylinder head or barrel or whatever you want to call it. And on the older models or bikes that use a similar engine, the O2 sensor is on the exhaust. Now obviously there is a port on that exhaust, but that port has been retrofitted by a welding company on behalf of the dealer who had this bike previously. So this MT's story is that it was sold obviously twice and returned twice. The first time it was sold as a bike in good running order. It was returned to the dealer. He found that light coming up for the O2 sensor, looked into it, thought he'd rectified the problem by having a port put in, and then sold it again. And obviously the problem persisted, and then the bike was returned again. So the dealer had obviously had enough, because he cannot warranty this bike with an engine management light that keeps coming back. Now, there's no guarantees that that is exactly what's causing the problem on this, but that is what the dealer thought was the problem. He spoke to a Yamaha technician and they said that probably is the problem, but obviously he'd sold it and returned it twice, which meant he was, out the delivery miles and everything. So he couldn't spend any more time on this bike and he just wanted to get rid of it. And he watches this channel and he's really sound. I actually bought a bike off him previously, so this one has ended up with me. So my theory is, if I replace the exhaust with the correct exhaust for like a 2019 model, which is exactly the same as that, but it has a O2 port on it from factory, then that should solve the problem. And I know it'll solve I will know if it solves the problem, because if I turn that O2 light out and I do about 2 miles on it, that O2 light will come back on. Whereas if I put the new exhaust on it, knock the engine management light off, and it doesn't come back on after a couple of miles, then we know the problem is solved. So let's drop this exhaust and put the one on that I got in a box over there. So to remove the exhaust, you've got 4 Allen bolts to remove the plastic cover towards the front of the exhaust, and then you've got another Allen bolt with a nut on it towards the rear of the exhaust to remove. After that, you've got 2 nuts on the exhaust studs. We whiz them off with an impact, and job's a good one. As you can see, bar this shielding and this little bit around the end, the exhausts are basically the same, but that exhaust port is wider and shallower just about than the other one. So we're going to try that. But first, I'm going to make sure the O2 sensor actually screws in. And if you look, that one, can't really see it very well. It's a bit narrow at the bottom. That one is nice and wide. So it looks like the sensor will actually go in there. Whereas I don't think on this one, the sensor was probably sitting just outside of the exhaust rather than inside of it. So time to put the new exhaust in place, or brand new second-hand exhaust in place. So to put the new one on, we're just doing everything we did to take the old one off, but in reverse, starting with the bolt at the back, the 2 nuts at the front, and then the 4 Allen bolts for the plastic covering. So now the exhaust is back on, the sensor's in, reassemble that little front panel, and then put all the trims on the rear of the exhaust. Now at this point, it would probably make sense to clear the code and run the bike and make sure the light goes away and stays off. But if I do that, the exhaust is going to be hot and then it's going to be difficult to put the rest of the trims on. So I'm just going to put those on and hope that this has fixed the problem. So this part of the exhaust should just be a couple of Allen bolts to get this trim off, and then, or heat shield, and then we'll put this one on the other exhaust. So there's 1, 2, and 3, and then there's 3 in this back section as well. So at this point, I should probably remind you that I am absolutely in no way an expert on this, and changing the exhaust is simply a theory that I have in order to fix this problem, and that it may not actually fix the issue with the bike at this point. Okay, that was actually all incredibly easy for once. So I'm going to switch the bike on, I'm going to leave it run for a bit and see if the code will go away on its own. Got a feeling it's going to need resetting, but like I said, it would normally come back on within a couple of miles. So I'm going to turn it on, I'm going to warm it up and see what happens. So ignition on. And it's not going away on its own yet. Okay, left the bike running for a couple of minutes and still not going away, so I'm going to have to reset that light. Okay, so seat is back on. I've plugged in the diagnostics. Engine light seems to have disappeared. Started up, I'm going to leave it run for a little while and see if it comes back at all. I'm also going to do a couple of laps around the unit. I'm not going to take it outside because it's dark and it's wet, but I'm just going to run it back and forth. Okay, so the Yam seems to be fixed. The light has not come back on yet. If I start it up, we have no light. Seems to run absolutely fine. So obviously I knocked that light out. I left the bike idling for 5-10 minutes. I've done a good few trips back and forth down the main stretch of the unit compound, and the light hasn't come back on, whereas previously it would have come back on after, you know, a bit of idling and a little bit of running. So now I need to put that bike up for sale. I will test it throughout the week just to keep making sure that O2 sensor light or engine management light doesn't come back on. But That's fixed amazingly. I fixed something on the first try, it seems. Now I'm gonna put that bike up for sale for about £2,700 because that is the same price that the dealer who sold it twice sold it at both times. Now, obviously that would leave me with a nice profit, and I will tell you how much I paid for it, but not quite yet. So now it's time to make an advert on Facebook Marketplace and cut back to later in the week when either I've sold the bike or I haven't sold the bike and I'm thinking about what the next move is. Okay, so fast forward, it's been 3 or 4 days now since I've fixed the Yamaha. I've started it and run it a couple of times, the light hasn't come back on. But interestingly, it's been 3 or 4 days since I put it on Facebook for sale and I've not really had any interest in it yet. Which is quite strange for a good looking bike like this Yamaha MT, especially one that is all ready for the road. And that just goes to show where the risk is on this particular flip bike, because obviously that bike is the most expensive one I've ever bought on the channel. In fact, it was more expensive than the Royal Enfield that I did last month. And that thing was basically brand new, or the mileage was at least. The Yamaha MT in there cost me £1,500, which I know that doesn't sound mega money for one of those because they regularly go for like 2.5 grand, that sort of year, that sort of mileage. You know, they were 5 or 6 grand new. But 1,500 quid, that's a lot of money for me to spend on any bike. Normally the projects and things that I buy are 200-300 quid. I mean, the Royal Enfield was £1,200. That was the most expensive until now. I mean, my Facebook ad has been asking just shy of 3 grand. And the reason I put it at that price is there is only one other for sale within about 50 miles of me. And they were asking 3,200 for theirs. And it's the same year and same mileage. So I thought if I put mine out slightly cheaper, maybe I'll get a quick sale. But I suppose ultimately the risk comes in because it is just a 125. In my opinion, if it was for me to ride and run around on, I'd probably never pay more than £1,000 for a 125. And the sort of people who ride 125s tend to not have 2 to 3 grand to spend on a 125. They're usually new riders. Or if they do go with an expensive 125, it's usually on finance from a dealership, which obviously this is not. I can't provide finance options. And it was also a risk because I simply didn't know or couldn't guarantee that my idea of how to fix the bike would actually fix it. But luckily it did seem to fix it. So quite chuffed with that one actually. I actually put a fix or had an idea of how to fix something and I fixed it. So ultimately, that is where the risk is on this bike for me. If I can't sell that quickly, then I've got quite a lot of money tied up and I got £1,500 in the bike, £50 on the exhaust. I mean, that is all it owes me, but obviously without that money, I can't keep buying and selling more bikes or, you know, I can't keep doing the quick flips because my money is tied up in that one. Now, I know it's only been a few days, so there is still plenty of time to sell it. You know, it could take 2-3 weeks maybe, which would still be a relatively good turnaround. I mean, as long as I get over 2.2, then that is a very good result on that bike. But right now, it is just a case of waiting for somebody to make me a suitable offer on the MT125. Now, weirdly, I actually don't have much else to put in this video. Normally, there'd be me trying to fix a bunch of things and then maybe clean the flip bike before I sell it, but actually that one is clean, it's tidy, it doesn't need anything else. It's got about maybe less than an hour's work of me changing the exhaust on it, and that is it. So if I could get 2.2, 2.3, that would be an excellent result. 2.5 would be the magic number. I make nearly £1,000 then. And as nice as that would be, I don't mind making a bit less because, like I said, I don't have that much time in it. So unfortunately, I can't end this video with me actually telling you how much profit I made, or, you know, whether the risk was worth the reward. But I guess in a Sam's Auto Assortium first, I fixed something on the first go. So if you enjoyed this video anyway, then make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you think the risk is going to be worth the reward on this bike and that I should do all right out of it, then make sure you let me know in the comments. Or if you think I'm not going to do quite as well as I'm hoping to do on that bike, then let me know in the comments either way. I personally think the risk will pay off. I just need to be a bit patient. So with the question of risk versus reward on the Yamaha MT still pending, that is all we've got time for this week. So thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in the next video.